The session that you've joined now is covering our dynamic UDFs or user-defined field functionality in ProLink HFA, which is a new feature. This session will be presented by Nick Jacques, who is our senior product owner. And Nick has an extensive background in software engineering, primarily focused on managing ProLink AIM, which is our investor and syndicator product, but also providing product management support to ProLink's other product lines, including ProLink HFA and Procorum. The dynamic UDF feature, we have UDFs also in ProLink AIM. So as you can imagine, there's some crossover functionality between the systems that we are all very familiar with, even if we might specialize in one. So just a heads up, this session is considered advanced and technical. There are some SQL kind of pieces that are required and involved in this session. So with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Nick. I will wrap up at the end and thank you again, but I want to say it in case anybody doesn't hold on till the very end. Thank you so much for participating this year in ProLink Tech Live. I'm very appreciative of the attention and the value that is assigned to training for your organization. And I look forward to working with you as we move on down the road here. So Nick, I'll let you take over screen share at this point.
Cool. Thank you, Bree. Just one moment here. Okay, how's that look?
You look good.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So as Bree said, my name is Nicholas Jacques, product owner here at ProLink Solutions. I'm relatively new to ProLink Solutions, but I've been in the technology software industry for quite a long time. And I've kind of had a personal interest for most of my life in housing policy, urbanism, kind of economics, architecture, all those things. So I'm really excited to be here to like work in a role that really touches a lot of my personal interests. So for this session today, we're going to be talking about user-defined fields. Kind of a quick agenda for this session. We'll start by just going over sort of the basics. We'll talk about how to configure them. We'll talk about a little bit about the new features that have been introduced recently. And then finally, we'll get into how user-defined fields sort of work with other ProLink HFA features and functionality like data views, workflows, and smart docs. As far as who this session is for, like Bree mentioned, it's a little bit more technical, but I try not to overdo it with the technicality here, and mostly provide resources for if you're doing something that is more technical, having a good resource to know where to look for more information on that, and sort of just giving you a heads up on like where is this going to become more technical and where won't it. So really this is sort of targeted towards ProLink HFA administrators, ProLink HFA power users, and then of course just anyone who is curious or ambitious and just wants to know more. It is important to know that in order to do a lot of the UDF configuration, you will have to have certain privileges within the system for your user role. So you might not be able, some of this might not apply to you if you don't have those privileges. Okay, so getting started with the UDF basics. But what are UDFs? Kind of in short, UDFs are a way to add additional fields to ProLink HFA for the purpose of tracking data that is either not included in the application by default or is just something that's kind of outside the scope of the kind of common functionality of the application. We all kind of work in the same domain within this application and within this field, but every agency might have its own unique kind of reporting requirements, data tracking needs. So UDFs provide a way to kind of cover those additional needs. The sort of big feature of this is that you can cover those additional needs without us at ProLink having to do any additional development work. It's something that is self-configurable and self-managed. So if you identify a data point that you need to track and the system doesn't currently allow for it, there's no back and forth with us. You can just configure a new UDF and kind of go on your way. So it's a really quick turnaround on that. The other kind of important thing to note is that I've already mentioned is that UDFs, even though they kind of exist outside the main system functionality of ProLink HFA, they do integrate with some of ProLink HFA's other features. On this slide, I'm not going to go over all of these bullet points, but I just kind of wanted to highlight that these are all of the sort of object types in ProLink HFA that currently support UDFs. I was looking at some older documentation in doing research for this presentation, and there was kind of a similar list from 2 years ago, and I'd say this list has grown by about 40% since that older list 2 years ago. So it's not, UDFs aren't supported on every object type by default. It is something that kind of that requires some setup and dev work by us at ProLink if they don't already support it. It mostly just takes some due diligence on our part to make sure we can implement it properly for that object type. But all of these objects that you see here, you can use UDFs right out of the box. There's nothing for us to do to make that work. So what UDFs actually look like in practice, if you're not a system administrator, it's quite possible you've already been using UDFs and didn't know it. UDFs are located within their own tab on any object or entity in the system. That tab may be called custom fields. That's kind of the default value for where those UDFs would go, but that tab can be renamed and you can actually have up to 10 UDF tabs per object. So something like this residential tab over here could be a UDF or it might not. It's really well integrated within kind of the existing functionality. One important thing to note is that UDF fields will never be mixed in with system fields. So this like main tab over here on the far left, that would be considered a system tab, and you would never see UDFs in that tab, and vice versa. You would never see system fields on a UDF tab. They're always kind of isolated in their own area. UDFs support the following data types. There's a little bit of information about each one. Alphanumeric is sort of just your standard like text input field, like a smaller text input. The limit's 255 characters. So this would be, use case for this would be something that's more like a name or maybe an ID. Something smaller, not something where you'd be, as soon as you start writing sentences or using grammar, then that's probably not the place for that data. Currency is pretty straightforward. It's just a number field formatted as currency. So you'll end up with the $sign, 2 decimals places. The date field is a pretty functional one. That will appear either or both as a text input, and there is a calendar kind of date picker that will pop up on that one. So you can either kind of enter the date as text, like June 26th, 2020, or you can click on the calendar icon and just select the date manually in a calendar. Numeric, there's nothing too interesting about that one. It's just a number. Percent, same thing. It's just a number formatted formatted as percent. Text area is very similar to the alphanumeric field, except for it is much larger, as you might imagine. And that supports up to 5,000 characters of data. The yes, no field is simply just a Boolean field. So when checked, it'll evaluate to true, and then when unchecked, it will evaluate to false. And finally, we do support pickless fields. This you may also might call this just a drop-down menu. We use the term picklist a lot here at ProLink, but it's the same thing. And for that one, you can both kind of create a pick list field and then also define the options within that pick list. And you do that after kind of saving the initial pick list field. So here's what they all look like within the application. One thing to notice is that the text area will kind of take up the entire screen. Whereas the other ones are only half the screen. But they all look just about like how you would expect them. At this point, we're gonna do all three of our poll questions in a row. The first one here that you see is sort of mostly on like your usage, and then the other two are more quiz-like. And we actually haven't covered the information that those questions are on yet. So it's kind of just to get an idea of what you think now, and then we'll see if it matches up with the information that we cover later. So the first question here, do you have experience configuring UDFs for your organization? Yes, some, a lot. I'm a power user. C, I've never even heard of them. And then D, no. So Sam, go ahead and open up the poll. And then let me know when you're ready to move on. All right, so we've got a pretty good distribution here. That's nice to see. We've got some power users, we've got some people who have worked with them before, and then a fair number of people who haven't used them. Hopefully this presentation will be helpful for you. Next question here. UDFs mapped via smart docs can send or receive data in which direction? So what direction do UDF fields support in smart docs? Is it get only, B, send only, or C, both get and send? We'll wait 30 seconds for answers. Okay, what do we get? We got 8% said get only, and then the vast majority of you were correct that they support both get and send. If you were wrong, do not feel bad because we haven't actually covered this yet, but we will talk about it more in a little bit. And then final question, UDFs can be used to store sensitive data like social security numbers or passwords. Just a simple one, true or false. We'll do another 30 seconds for this one. I also wish I had some Jeopardy music for this. Next year I'll be more prepared. Okay, and the answers are in. Oh, this one's a more even split. That is interesting. The answer to this is actually false. Um, the reason for that is if you know a little bit about how databases work. The sensitive data has certain requirements about how that data is stored in a database and how that data is accessed. It has to be encrypted. There has to be certain access controls for those particular columns. And so we don't have that set up for UDFs this time. So I would not recommend adding sensitive data to those fields. Okay, so getting into the configuration, the user-defined fields configurator is located in the utilities menu up in the sidebar. It's kind of all the way down at the bottom of the utilities section. When you click that item, you'll see this data grid on the right here that will kind of show all of the supported objects for UDFs in the left column, a little bit of information about them in the other columns. But kind of the neat thing about this particular page is that this is actually a data view. So you can kind of customize this page. You can make additional views for your UDFs. Maybe you want to organize them by domain or by department or by user role. You can do a lot to kind of make your configuration of UDFs more organized. From this page, you can then select an object type by just clicking on the row. And then when you do that, you'll be taken to the edit user defined field object page. And then this is where you can actually configure the UDF fields and tabs for that object. You'll see at the top, there's two tabs here. One is user defined fields, one is UDF tabs. It's pretty straightforward. They do exactly what they sound like. In your workflow, you'll probably be creating a tab first if you don't have one that already exists. So you would select that UDF tabs tab first. And you would then select the add UDF tab button. And that will bring you to this page here. There's not a whole lot to configure on tabs themselves. The tab name fields will be the what is actually visible to the user. So that'll be the name of the tab that appears on the page. Tab order allows you to specify the position of that tab within the list of tabs. And it's just left to right. So 1 would be leftmost, 2 would be right of that, 3 would be right of that, and so on. And then finally is visible. It's important to note that you can't, once you have created a user-defined field tab and have assigned fields to it, you can no longer delete that tab. The reason we have that restriction in place is just to preserve the data. If there was any data entered in fields on that tab, we don't want to just be able to delete it that easily. So the kind of workaround for that is we have really more of a soft delete, which is this is visible checkbox. So if you uncheck it, then that tab will no longer show up on the page, and it also won't count towards your tab limit any longer. So you can have up to 10 tabs. If this is unchecked, it won't count towards your limit. So once you've created your tab, then you'll probably want to create one or more actual user-defined fields. So you'll just switch to that other tab, and there's a bit more to play with on this page. You've got the field title, again, it's just it's the label for that field that will show up on the page to the user. You've got the field data type that's selecting what type of field it is from that list of field types that we covered. Is active, same thing. This is your kind of soft delete, whether or not that field is visible on the page. You will notice the object type shows up on the upper right of this page, but you can't change that because that's just kind of telling you we're adding a user-defined field to this particular object. If you changed your mind and you wanted to add it to a different object, then you would just cancel out, go back to that main page, and then find the object that you actually wanted the UDF to be built on. Oh, actually, one more thing on this page, the description is kind of an interesting one. This doesn't actually show up in the UI for a user. This description is more for your benefit as an administrator. It will show up in the user-defined fields list table. So you can add something to the description that kind of reminds you of what that field is for, or provides some context for that field. The other thing that's useful about the description box is that you can also get the value of that description in Smart Docs. So we'll kind of look at that in a little bit, but you can get the field description and populate that in your Smart Docs document to provide context in that document. Continuing with this page, the UDF tab name, that's where you would select the tab that you just created in the previous step, or you would select a different tab. The section header name, this is a bit of a different concept. I'll show you an example of this in the next slide. But within a single UDF tab, you can also have separate sections to kind of further organize your fields. And for that one, you just have to, as long as if you're making two different user-defined fields, as long as the value you add to the section header name matches, then both of those fields will be in the same section. Row is just how you set your vertical order. So again, if you put a 1 in there, it'll be at the top of the list. If you put any number higher than 1, it'll be at some other point in the list of fields. Column is your horizontal order. And for this one, it's a little less open-ended. You can just have up to 2 columns. So you either select 1 or 2 there to either kind of be on the left or the right of the tab. On screen is one that you probably won't have a use case for very often. The reason this exists is in case you have a scenario where potentially you still care about the data in a user-defined field, but you don't want people to be able to add additional data at this point. You could keep the is active checkbox checked and then uncheck on screen. And then data would still show up in your data views and be mappable via Smart Docs, but it would no longer appear on the screen. So that's kind of a niche use case. On data view is just whether or not it can be shown in when you're setting up a custom or setting up a data view. Available in Smart Docs does exactly what it sounds like. And then the on reporting view is a little bit more technical. But basically, if you check that, that checkbox is only available if on data view is also checked. And if you check on reporting view, then the fields will be included in the corresponding SSRS report.view within SQL Server. So check, there's going to be some links at the end of this deck with some more documentation. So if that's something that's relevant to you or something that you're working on, there should be a link in there for more information about that. So here's just kind of a breakdown of how the page configuration works. There's a couple, not quite gotchas, but things to be aware of. In the red boxes here, you can see where column 1 and column 2 are. And you'll notice that the headers actually span both columns. So the first header that you set will be at the top, and it will span column 1 and column 2. The next header will be below all of the fields in this header section and span column 1 and column 2. The other thing to be aware of is that the row number, when you're configuring the row here, is relative to both the section and the column that that field is in. So in this case, this alphanumeric field at the top is in row 1, column 1, and then it's in under header 1. This alphanumeric 2 is in row 1, section 2, column 1. This currency 2 over here on the right is also would have row 1 configured, but it's in column 2, section 1. So you always have to think about like what is the header for my UDF and what column am I in when you're setting which row you want it to be in. So that can be a little bit tricky, but you can always play around in UAT to kind of get a feel for how these work. And then once you get it, it's pretty intuitive. Some additional notes on UDF configuration. You can't change the data type of a UDF after it has been created. You can probably imagine why, but if you have something that's a text field and you decide that you want it to be a number, you can't just convert a bunch of text fields to numbers. You kind of have to start over with a new field. We already mentioned this, but UDFs cannot be deleted. They can just be hidden. UDFs should not be used for sensitive data. Oh, this is an interesting one. So as far as who is able to edit or submit information in these user-defined fields once they've been configured, any user that has view, edit, or delete permissions on the main tab of an object will have the same permissions on its UDF tab. So if you have a user role that can input information on deals that on the main tab, then they'll be able to do it on any UDF tabs on deals as well. And then one last note to mention is that I think a pretty common workflow is for administrators to like experiment with and draft their UDFs in their UAT environment, which I think is good practice. It can help keep your prod environment a little cleaner. But there's one sort of caveat to that, which is that there isn't at this time a process for migrating all those UDFs from UAT to prod. So once you kind of build all of your UDFs to your satisfaction in UAT, you will have to rebuild them in prod. So that's just something to be aware of so you're not disappointed if you build them all in UAT and realize there's no way to migrate them. So as far as what's new, we'll just cover this briefly because we've already sort of talked about this functionality. But we had some fairly large changes to UDFs recently. The kind of primary change was to kind of morph the UDF categories concept into additional UDF tabs. So you can see on the right here in the before image, there used to be there was a single custom fields tab And within that tab, you could have sub tabs. But it caused additional nesting of data and sort of buried those UDFs a little bit. So I think it's a lot cleaner to just have all those tabs moved up to the top level, and just have them kind of exist as siblings with the rest of the tabs for that object. Okay, so now we'll get into a little bit more of how UDFs work with these other features. If you're not familiar with data views, I think you probably are, because I think we might have had a session on them very recently. But it's just a way of they're customizable presentations of data that can provide a lot of support around filtering and grouping and sorting and data analysis. So UDFs are available in data views, and it's pretty straightforward to have them included. When you're in the view manager for a data view, you'll just the UDF fields will be prepended by the tab name on which they exist. So in this example here, all of these UDFs are on the custom fields tab, and you just have to the fields are sorted alphabetically, and so you just have to scroll down to the name of the tab, and then you'll find all of your UDFs. So if any of the fields kind of if any of the properties, or sorry, fields from the object's main tab are available in the data view, then its UDFs will also be available. The sort of tricky thing here is that UDFs can be included in custom data views, but this requires a more advanced knowledge of SQL and our data model within ProLink HFA's database in order to implement that. So there is also some documentation on this that I'll include in this slide deck, but you can also contact support for assistance with that if that's something that you need to do. And I will show you shortly just a little bit more of how this looks within the application. UDFs and workflows. If you're not familiar with workflows, it's just a way to trigger an event, like an email reminder, on specific states of data within the application. Kind of same story here. UDFs are pretty well supported within workflows. You just need to, within this criteria section here that's circled, you select user-defined field object in the first dropdown, and then within the second dropdown here where you see currency 2 right now, that will have all of your user-defined fields for that object. And then from there you get the same sort of functionality as far as setting criteria on different conditions. The one caveat here is that UDF pick lists are a little bit more complicated to set up. It can be done, but it just, again, requires a more advanced knowledge of the database structure and SQL. So again, if you're brave, you could probably figure it out yourself, but if not, you can just contact support. We'll be happy to help you with it. And then finally, UDFs and Smart Docs. Same story here is that UDFs are really well supported in Smart Docs. In the schema section of the Smart Docs mapper, you just have to select an object that is either the object that your UDFs exist on or a parent of that object, so that it can be included in your mapping structure. Once you kind of find, like in this case, if your UDFs are on the deal property object, if you expand that, you first want to add deal property to your mapped groups, and then add user-defined field values to those mapped groups. And you'll also see the user-defined field descriptions are available Like I said, that's useful for kind of adding extra context to your document. And so then once you've kind of added your user-defined field values group, if you have that selected in the mapper, then you will see all of your available fields over here on the right. And again, they'll be prepended with the name of the tab that they exist on. And like I mentioned earlier, they can be mapped in both directions. Pick lists are fully supported. When you do a get, if you have a mapped pick list, it will bring down all of the pick list options into your document. So yeah, really well supported there. So here's kind of some helpful links that you can use. And at this time, I'm going to actually open up ProLink HFA and just show you a little bit more in practice of how this might work. Give me just one moment to get set up. Okay, so we're just on like the main page of the HFA application right now. So to get to the user-defined fields configuration, you would over here on the left expand the Utilities tab. And then you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom of Utilities. They're just alphabetical, but it's basically the last item in the Utilities sidebar. So from here, you can see that data view that has all of the objects that are available for user-defined fields. And we're just going to add some to dev properties right now. We're going to start by adding a UDF tab. And I was trying to think of like good example data for this demo, and I didn't know what to do. So we're going to use kind of a contrived data set here that may not match reality, but it will at least demonstrate how this works. So let's pretend that for whatever reason, we need to track property maintenance at a property and maybe how it's run. I'm not going to set the tab order. I'm okay with it just sort of showing up to the right, and we'll leave is visible checked. We will do save and return. And you'll notice if we were on the deal property page, if we refresh this, you don't see anything yet. It's not there. And the reason for that is because we haven't added any actual fields to it. So you have to add at least one field for it to show up. So now we'll navigate to, oh, go back. Navigate to the user defined fields tab. We're going to select add user defined field. And we'll call this field the company name, maybe. We'll make this an alphanumeric field because that's a good use case for names. And we'll say this is the company that provides lawn care services. And then in selecting a tab, we're going to select our new property maintenance tab. And then we'll actually set a header as well. We'll say lawn care. Say row 1, we want it to be at the top, and column 1, we'll have it on the left. We'll hit save and new, and we'll just do a couple more so we have a few examples. We'll say maybe, I don't know, one for budget. We'll make it a currency field. the description isn't too important here. And we'll do property maintenance, we'll do lawn care, and we'll say, well, that's also going to be row 1, and we're going to put it in column 2. And we'll hit save. And we'll just do one more just so I can show you what how a pick list is configured. And actually, I need to go back to do a new. Okay, so we'll add another user-defined field. I wasn't sure what to do for a pick list, so we'll just say performance, maybe. How well is this company doing? We'll select pick list here. We're going to put it again on property maintenance. We're going to say lawn care as our section header. We're going to do row 2, column 1. You'll notice on this page right now that there is nowhere to configure the pick list options. And that is okay, because what you have to do is you need to click save first. Okay, now that we have clicked save, you can kind of see this values for pick list area that wasn't there before. So from here, we can actually add some pick list values. So name is just how it will show up in your pick list. So we'll say performance could either be good. I'm not going to set a sort order, but again, fairly self-explanatory. If you set it to 1, it'll be top of the list. If you set it to 2, it'll be the next one down. Do save and new, so we can do one more. And we'll say bad. We'll do save and return. Okay, so now that we have some user-defined fields to play with, let's go back over to our dev property and refresh the page. And hopefully, if I did everything right, that new tab should show up. And there it is. So you can see we've got lawn care as a section. You've got your company name. It's an alphanumeric field. You've got your performance pick list. You will notice that if you don't order them yourselves, then whatever you created most recently will be at the top. And then our budget, if we enter a number there, let's say it's 60,000. It'll format it as a currency. We'll call it lawn and order. It's one of my favorite lawn care company names. We'll say they're good. Do a save. So now that we've seen that, kind of the next thing I want to show you is back in the utilities, or sorry, in the admin. If you go to security roles, and I'm just going to select system administrator here for this purpose of this. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of this page, there are 3 privileges: utilities, supportive services, user-defined fields, add, modify, delete, and view. These are the privileges that you need to have in order to be able to configure UDFs yourself. So if you don't have these three for your user role, then you're not going to be able to do this configuration. You'll kind of notice in this particular case, these are unchecked. And that's because there is one exception to that, which is these administrative delete, administrative modify, and administrative read privileges. Those kind of overwrite any other privileges. If you have this, those will take precedence. So in this case, that's what I have. So that's why I was able to do it. So next, if we take a look at a data view, just to show that in practice. You need to navigate to a data view that is kind of related to the object whose UDFs you want to see. Otherwise, it might not be an option in there. One moment. Okay, yeah, we'll go to properties. You'll notice right now you don't see any custom fields here. We go into the view manager. Let's make a new view, call it Nix temp view. This one's not quite as well organized, but it is alphabetical. So our custom tab was called property maintenance. And like I said, they'll all be prepended with the tab name. So if we scroll down, if I can remember how the alphabet works. Maybe I'm in the wrong data view because I don't see it. Hold on one moment. Let's try deals. Oh, go into view manager. Let's see if I can find it here. If not, then I will have to look into more of why it's not there. Maybe it would be under custom fields instead. I'm not sure on that one, but I can show you one other example of this. So in this data view for the dev properties, you'll see all of these custom fields options here. And kind of previously when setting up for this presentation, I had made a separate custom fields tab on the deal property. And it's just called custom fields. And so I had like a field called alphanumeric and a field called currency field called percent field. And you can see these here. There's the alphanumeric field, currency field, date field. So that's just how they show up in the data view. So if you add them, then that data will show up in your view. The next one, I'll just quickly show you. I won't make a whole one, but I'll just show you what it looks like in the workflows. So we'll navigate to admin. and then workflow. We'll say new workflow. We'll choose our associated object. Which will be a dev deal. Oops. There we go. When you select an object, the page refreshes because it kind of has to update some of the fields. But then if we go down to criteria, we can see kind of a whole bunch of different options there. You're going to want to, you'll see this user-defined field objects option in the first dropdown. And then once you've selected that, now you have access to all of your user-defined fields on that object. And there's a lot of them in this case. And in this case, they are not prepended with the tab name. So you'll just have to look alphabetically for the particular field that you're looking for. And then finally, I'll quickly show you what this looks like. What this looks like in Smart Docs. So let me bring up an Excel window. So if you're starting with a brand new template, I'm already logged in. We'll select map fields and it's going to ask me to select a schema. Oh, maybe I have to log back in. Just one moment while that works. Okay, there we go. So we'll select a schema. I'll say, let's do development. It'll make you save it. Just say test book 1. And so then you're kind of brought to the mapper window. So this was on the ones that we just made were on deal property, and we have dev deals is already added to our mapped groups. So we'll want to select deal property and click add group as well, and then expand deal property and add the user defined field values. We'll go back and select deal property again and do the user defined field descriptions. Once you've done that, then you can actually map the fields themselves. So we'll say maybe this is just the field name. This will be the value. And then this will be the description. So for this first one, what did we call it? It was like company name. We'll select this cell here and select user defined field values here. Scroll down, you'll see the property maintenance, and we'll select property maintenance company name. Right now we have it set to both directions, and we'll click map. And then we'll do the one next to it. We're going to select user defined field descriptions, and we're going to get the description for that same field. And we'll say map. Oh, and so description is get only. So before you do that, you have to select get. and then map. So now that we have those two mapped fields, I'm going to close this and we'll see if we can do a get. I'll have to select a development type first. I believe the one I had edited was called 1428 Piccadilly Street. And there we go. So we got Law and Order as the company name. We see the description here, which I wrote the wrong thing, but that's okay. And we should be able to change the name to, I don't know, Nick's Lawn Care. And then we can do a send data. And fingers crossed to have it all set up right. And go back here and potentially see that updated company name. Yep, and there we go, Nick's Lawn Care. So that's kind of Smart Docs in a nutshell. I know you guys already did a Smart Docs session. So really the only difference is just when you're doing the mapping, kind of having to add in that additional group in order to map the user-defined fields. They're kind of separate from the other object. But once you get that, it's all the same. So that will conclude my presentation on UDFs. If there are any additional Q&A remaining, we'll help you out with that. But I'll hand it over to Bree at this time.
Thanks, Nick. That was great. Sam, do we have anything for Q&A?
Currently, there are no outstanding questions. One did come in from Elena that Andrea Beckley will have to follow up on after the conference.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Okay, let's go ahead and get into just our final wrap up for the day. So Nick, I appreciate you doing that session. Thank you very much. I hope those
No
of you
problem.
who are on found it valuable. Hold on, let me just hide there we go. As a final reminder, we have a copy of Nick's PowerPoint available here on the side of under resources, which you can see pictured here. So just navigate to resources to download a copy of this presentation. And then again, you have 90 days to come back to CVent into our conference homepage and navigate to the different sessions we posted for this conference to access both the recordings and the materials that we covered. We've posted the winners for our coffee and bagel for day 2 on the conference platform homepage. So thank you for joining Mary Todd from Idaho Housing Finance Agency, Heather Black from Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, and Kranti from OHCS. You have been our selected winners for our little giveaway. We hope you enjoyed those gift cards. And then let's see, the last thing I want to point out is if you navigate to the and this is important, guys, we would really like this feedback. If you go to the platform homepage, you'll see a survey has opened up. We would love to hear from you. So please provide any feedback you have regarding our virtual conference, anything about it, the content, the sessions, improvements, things you liked, things you didn't like, things you were hoping to see. We really appreciate that opportunity to make next year's better. And this concludes our ProLink Tech Live 2024. So I hope you all enjoyed at least some, if not all, of the 8 sessions that we prepared for this conference. For those who participated in Coffee and Bagel, it was great seeing you. Thank you for saying hi. We've opened up an event survey, which I just covered. So I think we're good. We greatly appreciate your participation, and we hope you were able to learn something new that you didn't already have a background in this year. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you as we move forward here through the rest of the year and at HFAI coming up. Have a good one, guys.